Hey, really quickly,
Section.
this is Jessica from GTA. I know that there's been a couple of comments about the connection breaking up. Would it be possible for everybody except for Jen to turn their cameras off? That will hopefully be a little bit less bandwidth, and so then hopefully be able to see if we can keep the connection.
I can turn mine out too. That might help. I'm not seeing the chat, so I think Jessica's checking that for me. So if y'all keep me going. Okay. So here again, sections 2 through 4 not needed, or the driver's license is not needed. And here on this line, section 3, you're going to put broadband and then add new bank account on section 4. Before I keep going, any questions on the vendor piece of that? Okay, perfect. Okay, we kind of touched about on this briefly. Before submitting reimbursement requests, you guys need to submit that final budget to your grant specialist. Again, you can find it on the website under important documents. If you can't find it for some reason, just email Bria and she can send it over to you as well. It's in these slides. I'll post those up on the website again as well. I'll try to do that hopefully this afternoon. Try to get that online for you guys. There's a budget worksheet guide that is accompanying that. It's just a PDF document to show you kind of ask that in every category that you're asking for, there is a very detailed justification for us. Whether it's, you know, personnel associated with this, fringe, there's a very detailed breakdown that you have to do, supplies, equipment, etc. We need to know exactly what that's for, what it's going to be used for. Your supplies, anything under 5,000 will go into the supply category, etc. And that's all in that detailed worksheet guide. If you have any issues as you are doing that as well, let us know and we can hop on a Teams call with you and walk you through that too. All right. How's the breaking up? Is it better?
Yes, I think it's definitely better.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Jessica. Okay, so program justification. Jessica, I'm going to let you take this one since you guys are working through this.
Sure, absolutely. So as Jen mentioned, I think a lot of you have probably gotten initial contact from either Josh or myself. If you haven't, we will probably be reaching out to you in the next couple of days. It's our goal that obviously we have had the opportunity to meet with some applicants already, and then our goal is to at least have our initial conversations with every applicant by the end of next week. If there is something that we need to work to potentially amend or justify in their application. Before we quickly get into the justification portion of that, first, just to kind of discuss the amendment of, we will be reaching out, if we have not reached out to you already, of some of the applications do require some amendments. I believe that we have 4 pairs of applications where there is some minor overlap, and obviously we are not going to double fund locations. And so we're going to obviously work with those applicants to administratively, remove the duplication within those applications, just to make sure that everybody is aware with what the state is agreeing with for that application to move forward. We are also working with applicants in relation to RDOF, the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund locations. And so there are some applications that have minor overlaps with other providers' RDOF, and we are working with those applicants to remove those locations. And then that brings us to the justification. Based on Treasury's final rule, they're very clear on that. If there's an existing federal or state funding commitment, that there needs to be a justification of why there's additional investment needed on top of what is already being provided by the federal government. And so that's something that we will be working again with each of those applicants, that if they do have overlap with RDOF within their applications, to work through this portion of that justification. And I think that pretty well explains it. So I'll turn it back over to you, Jen, and we certainly can answer any questions from there.
Does anybody have any questions on the justification piece? Okay, perfect. So we talked earlier about the budget, final budgets, and so wanted to briefly touch on the budget revisions. So a couple of reasons that you might want to change anything in your final budget, as you get further down the road, changing in scope or the objective of the project or program, changing key personnel identified in the application or the award, disengagement from the project, costs that require prior approval, and ultimately probably the largest one we're going to see here, just the transfer funds budgeted for participant support cost to other categories of expense, right? And so again, you might find as you get further down the road, you had a quote during the application period and that changed, and you had a higher cost in one category and you need to change that. The one thing I do want to note on these is that as you're doing them for the budget revisions, the next, unless it's really something that's going to impact your project, like you're spending right now, don't feel like you just have to, like, if something came in lower, you don't have to immediately change that, right? You can just hold it until you've identified maybe later in the quarter, later in the year, where you need to move that. So maybe, your personnel, you need a little bit more because you hadn't hired that person yet, and, it costs more and you need to pull in from a different category, et cetera. So those types of things, you can hang on to until you don't have to change those immediately. Changes in approved matching funds, right? So a lot of you guys put in match. So if there's any change to that, we also need you to do an amendment. If there's a change in scope or like the overall objective of your project, then you guys will need to submit a post-award amendment for a change in scope. You don't need to submit a separate post-award amendment for the budget revision because it just obviously won't make sense. And so those documents, again, will be on that For Grantees website under the important documents, and we'll load those next week. You guys haven't even started your projects yet, so I highly doubt you'll need the budget and post-award amendments yet. But we'll get those up so you can kind of see them and have them on file. For a change in scope, a couple of reasons that you may need to submit a change in scope request. Obviously, changes to the objectives, purpose, changes to the service areas, et cetera. Transfer of performance of substantive programmatic work, project revisions that cause project to change. And just a side note for that, we can't guarantee, when you put these in that they will be approved. We will look at them. We will look at your justification for those. And then this is what you'll need to include in your request. We'll also add this to the website. You'll need to email your budget revision request to your grantee, your grant specialist, which will be Bria. We are hopeful that this process will end up being portal side for you guys to make it all like a one-stop shop. But right now, since this is a new program, we're going to do it between your grant specialist, just via email right now. We ask that you put the budget revision request title with your GA number in there. That's your award number in that subject line. And then you'll have a cover letter explaining the change of scope or your budget revision, et cetera, and discussing any circumstances that change. Then you'll need an updated project narrative. So the same thing you had to do for your application, but you'll need to do a completely new one. And then you'll do an updated budget worksheet the same exact one that you do for your final budget. You'll do the same one with the line item justification for additional documentation or supporting documentation as you put those in. Any questions on budget revisions, change in scope, anything like that? All right, we'll keep it moving. So for your payment requests, I know the biggest thing is, hey, when can we start, getting our money, right? So you guys will have, your template will be the, like an OPB broadband template, just to have like an overview of, each document's personnel, each category that you're going to be requesting for, and that will be available online too. And then you'll need to submit supporting documentation as well. And so in that, a little crazy on me. Hang on one second, guys. So examples of the supporting documentation that you guys will include are, contracts, rental agreements. I'm just throwing, several things out there. Invoices, proof of payment, timesheets. If you have personnel, we want to make sure you have, payroll justification, timesheets, on that, making sure that you show, their positions, et cetera, and how much they were paid, and making sure that ties back to your payment request. And I think that the biggest question we often get to, amongst all this is, how fast will we be paid? How quick will the revision or the reviews happen, et cetera. A lot of these are really, and I hate saying it because it feels like a broken record too, is just like, it depends, right? So it depends on, assuming that's correct and doesn't get kicked back. It also depends on if the information is correct, if we can follow it. And I will say, payroll tends to probably be one of the ones that gets kicked back probably more than others, just because a lot of times when people put in for payroll requests, they're requesting, a couple of people, and they put in payroll that may be 10, 20, up to 100 or 200 people on there. So it makes it hard for us to identify that person. If there's no way for you guys to pull them out, we totally understand. Everybody's systems, are completely different. If you will just highlight the folks that you're requesting, if they appear on a sheet with someone else, that is super helpful for us. And then it cuts back on times that we have to come back to you for more information or for clarification. And it speeds up the time frame for your payments. If for some reason we need additional information from you or clarification, we'll kick those back, and they're called returns for revision. You'll get a notification in the portal that says, this, we call them PA numbers. We'll see that in a second, has been returned for revision. It'll give you an update and send back to us, and that deadline. We'll give you a 2-week time frame for revisions once that goes out. And then after that, you'll have to resubmit that same request, just because we have tons of duplicates that tend to, get really confusing. And they'll sit there on your portal too. So after that 2 weeks, you'll have to resubmit. Lots of questions that we got during the award process. Treasury has now updated their compliance reporting guide twice. And lucky for you guys, Broadband, they're going to push forth so we're just kind of waiting for those additional requirements, but I do wanted to touch briefly on the ones that we know that we're going to have to report on. We're in the process of adding this to the portal side to collect this information from the subrecipients. But a couple of things are, really high level stuff. All infrastructure projects will have to put in the projected or annual construction start dates, projected and actual initiation of operations, the location, and not just the primary place of the location, but for broadband, geospatial location data. For projects over 10 million, based on expected total costs, so not your award amount, expected total costs. You guys will have to report. You can either provide a certification for us, or you, for that project, that all laborers and mechanics employed by the contractors and subcontractors in the performance of the project are paid wages at rates not less than those prevailing as determined by the U.S. Secretary of Labor in accordance with subcheck. I'm not going to go over this. You guys are probably way more familiar with this than anybody. So in this, so you can either provide the certification. If it's not provided, you can do a report detailing this. And so on the portal side, we'll have where you can either probably upload the certification, some type of certification, or we can put in here where you have to report the number of employees of contractors and subcontractors working on the project, the number of employees on the project hired, the wages and benefits of workers, and whether those wages are at a rate less than those prevailing. Hey guys, I see where my connection's still breaking up. I think it's breaking up all over the board just because we have so many people in here. So what I'll do is I'll put the slides up today and I'll re-record this. We'll take questions and answers, at the end too. I'll re-record this, without everybody on here, and then I'll post that one on the website too, just so you can go back and comb through it without the interruption of the connection disruption. Y'all get me some better. All right, let's see. So just a couple other things on the laborer side. I'll let you guys take a look at these on the slide decks and stuff. I don't want to have to come through them just to save everybody's time. But basically everything on the local hires, right? So we'll collect that information from you guys. And then this is very specific to broadband projects that we just have to confirm that your project's designed to meet those, criteria that's set out by Treasury. And then I did put a note here about the additional programmatic data. They put in a date of July 2022 for when that would be released. So we'll keep you posted on that, making sure that you have access to, what will we need to have you guys report in their updated compliance and reporting guidance. We also keep that updated on our website too, that you guys can comb through that. But speaking of reporting and all that stuff, I do want to invite David to talk briefly. So we, at OPB, as you guys know, we know a whole lot about grant. Phenomenal amount about broadband through this process. But as far as the experts, I'm going to leave that to Jessica, you guys. And then we have contracted with RSM, who will be doing our infrastructure audits. So David Luker from RSM is going to speak on our audits program and what we're doing and how you guys can prepare for that.
Thanks, Jen. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
Okay, great. So nice to meet everyone. As Jen mentioned, RSM has been engaged specifically for the purposes of creating a program commonly referred to in some states as integrity monitoring or fraud monitoring. But there's really three distinct scopes of work that we're tasked with, and that's detecting, deterring, and monitoring for fraud, fiscal negligence, and non-compliance. So RSM is the 5th largest accounting firm in the country. We do CARES, ARPA, different monitoring programs for various states and various programs. We work directly with Treasury and FTA and FHWA and FEMA and others on programs like this. But in addition to that, RSM has a group of professionals that are broadband focused in their activities. So we're also working directly with the FCC clearing the C-band spectrum for broadband, satellite reprogramming, new launches of satellites, coordinations between space station schedules and Earth schedules, new equipment, those sort of things. We're also working in the USDA's Reconnect program, where we're working directly with RUS to administer that program for expanding broadband. And we have a team of folks that are really, we refer to them as like the 5G capability team. They work and manage both cellular and broadband networks. And so I am here in Atlanta, grew up in Georgia, and am, an auditor in several of these programs in other states throughout the country. And so I am bringing this team together to help OPB execute on this monitoring program. And so, Jen, if you could skip to the next slide, just a couple of little notes here. One thing that RSM is tasked to do in this process is to work with OPB in performing some feasibility and evaluations of those budget documents. So the budget links that Jen and her team have provided and shared with you guys, we're going to have a look at those as well. We're going to leverage the experience that we have in other broadband projects across the country to help provide some comments or questions on those. So fill those out as completely as you possibly can. We realize that some of the contracting from the subrecipients down to contractors won't have been done yet, but we really encourage as much detail as can be provided, to serve as the basis for those estimates so that they can be effectively evaluated. And then post-award, our team works very closely with each subrecipient to make sure that we're designing an audit plan that doesn't affect the project's performance. We realize that schedule and budget are the most important thing to the success of these projects. And so we want to help OPB and really help the broader stakeholder group for these funds identify instances of fraud. We want to reflect the transparency that's required within a program like this through our services, but we don't want to slow the project down. So be prepared to work with us. We will, for each grantee, we will reach out to conduct some initial interviews and kind of kickoff sessions with the teams. We would advise that you share with contractors and that you have contractors share with their subcontractors that there is a program like this in place for these funds. One of the most beneficial ways or one of the most effective ways to help a program like this move forward without affecting the day-to-day activities of the management team is by having a good document control and retention structure in place and providing auditors read-only access or download-only access to those files, so that rather than having to bug you guys for information requests, we can go straight to the source and pull that information ourselves. And also know that one of the really, I would say in a 17-year career, the most widely accepted and effective way to identify fraud is by talking to people. So we are going to be conducting interviews with laborers in the field, project management team members from both design and engineering services, as well as construction services, as well as project management. So we look forward to engaging with you guys and not slowing the process, but also making sure that we effectively prevent, detect, and deter any fraud on these types of programs. The audit areas on the right-hand side of this slide just kind of give you an idea of some of the core risk categories that we conduct procedures within. Most of those you'll be quite familiar with. Some of them you might not expect, but this kind of mirrors the programs that we use in other states. So next slide is just my contact information. As Jen mentioned, I'm happy to talk with anybody, answer any questions. Obviously, my team and I will assign auditors to each application, and that will be based upon the complexity and size of each application. So I might not be your direct point of contact when this program gets going, but I'm happy to answer any questions about the program as a whole, and look forward to working with each of you on this important initiative. So thanks, Jen.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm going to open it up for questions. I was going to do a grant care walkthrough, but since there are so many and a couple people came in late, well, a lot of people came in, after we started. So Bria was letting them in, and I think it just kind of filled up everything. So I was going to do a grant care walkthrough to show you what the portal looks like. So I'm going to save that for when I re-record it. I'll post it on the website, and we will send out emails to all the POCs that are listed in the application, or any related contacts that are listed in the application. So you guys have a link to that that'll be on our website. So that way you don't have to suffer through. But having said that, do we have any questions on anything so far, process-wise, justification, any for our team, Jessica, or for David?
Jen, I do. In terms of how the contracts will be set up, so we're a provider working through a few grantee awardees, I guess you'd say. So in order to keep things very simple, our hope would be is that we would work with the the contract team and the engineering contracts, and those contracts would be upon us, and then we would have just one agreement with the grant awardee, and in one case the county, in another case the foundation. Is that how you guys see that taking place, or do those contracts with the subcontractors need to be in those grant awardee names? Does that question make sense?
Okay.
Okay, so is our hope that we're going to be
You're cutting out.
responsible as the provider partner to get the work done, and then we will have an agreement with the grant awardee, because when we have the expertise in getting these things done, I mean, in one case the county, in another case the nonprofit, not necessarily have that type of experience. So our hope is that we would have the relationship with the contractors, and all of those construction engineering agreements would be between us and those subcontractors, and then we would have just one agreement with the grant awardee that would then turn those I guess fund requests into OPB. Is that how you guys see that going forward?
Yeah, I think either way is fine, but it does make sense because you guys are going to be monitoring like the work, right, that they're doing. So that makes sense. I mean, I don't know, there's an instance where, I mean, there may be other reasons for having it the opposite way, but yeah, that makes the most sense to me. And David, if you want to chime in, but that makes total sense. And it might be beneficial for the counties to say that, hey, the provider is going to be, dealing with all the, contractors under the grant. David, were you going to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Jen, that is the typical structure that we see in other grant programs. So to your point, we understand that Windstream would hire design professionals and contractors, and even your contractors will hire subcontractors. And so we would only expect those contractors to have direct contracts with the local jurisdictions if they were in fact being engaged directly by the local jurisdiction. So if Windstream is the one engaging them, that one-to-one relationship of Windstream contract with the local jurisdiction and Windstream having its own contracts with contractors is typically the structure that we see. So yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else? You guys are really quiet. Okay. All right. Well, you have our contact information. If you think of anything after this, feel free to reach out. Again, I will re-record this and put it up for you guys. I'll plop the slides up online just so you can kind of take a look at those anyway and kind of comb through them. But I'll re-record this and get this up for you guys so you can kind of go back through it without distractions. But if you need anything else, just let us know. And you guys got 7 more minutes of your time back.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you, Jen.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much, Jen.